What's the worst defense you've seen someone make in a court? Posted elsewhere, but I defended a guy who sent poop through the mail to his ex-GF from state prison. I don't know how it got past prison officials, but it did, and he didn't deny sending it. However, we went to trial because he wanted me to argue that the poop was expressive speech and thus protected by the First Amendment. We lost. TL. Doctor. Shit case. We lost. Shitposting eye roll. This comment has layers. I was in traffic court and the first guy to go before the judge got pulled over doing some crazy speed, like 140 miles per hour. The judge essentially told the guy to say he wouldn't ever do it again, and that it was a mistake, and in return, the judge would drop the ticket fee and the points on his record. The guy countered with, well, I drive that fast all the time, so I'm really good at it, and I don't think it was dangerous at all because of how good of a driver I am. Guy cold walked out totally free, but instead got a $2,500 F&E and 2 points on his record. Reminds me of a story about Butch Cassidy, the famous robber in the Old West. He was captured in Wyoming and brought before a judge. The judge said that he would let him go if he promised never to break the law again. Cassidy said that he couldn't do that, but he would promise never to break the law in Wyoming. And the judge took that deal, and Cassidy lived up to it. Anytime his gang planned a job in Wyoming, he opted out. I was high. I was gonna go to court, but I got high. I was gonna pay my child support, but I got high. They took my whole paycheck, and I know why. During law school in class I had to defend a hotel manager who was putting hidden cameras in the rooms. I had no ideas. Case law was pretty much in thorough consensus that it is in fact unlawful to do that. Yet, I had to put something together for oral argument, and also answer questions from the teacher/judge. It was a total disaster. I remained somewhat composed, somehow, but I really had no argument. The best I could do was that it was a digital camera and the files had never been opened or viewed, as far as evidence showed. So in some sense there never had been an actual image of the hotel guests. Just a bunch of ones and zeros that could of course become a video as soon as someone opened the file with proper software. It was a shitty and unconvincing argument. I don't really blame lawyers for shitty arguments like that. I blame the client for letting it get to that point. And I blame the court system when they actually work. I defended a guy on a DUI that jumped into the backseat after he got pulled over and claimed someone else was driving. He was the only one in the car. Jesus take the wheel. Was on the jury. During deliberation someone said okay, maybe he tried to kill his mom, but he won't try again after failing. I say we give him another chance. In the end we did not give Joker Light another chance. Joker Light. LMAO. It says here you were drinking and driving, judge. No sir, I drank then I drove. A guilty guy. Hands down it's a tie between every sovereign citizen I've seen in court for a simple traffic violation like displaying expired plates or not registering a vehicle. The defense is always a stupid variation of this court doesn't have jurisdiction, because the wrong flag is displayed in the courtroom. No, you see your honor, I wasn't driving my car. I was traveling with my vehicle. You have no authority over me, because according to maritime law, my body is a sea traveling vessel. We had a guy in court when I was in CPS for beating his kid with a belt. In court, he asked the judge if he could take off his belt and demonstrate how hard he hit his kid by using his jacket on the back of a chair. The judge was like, what ifs, go for it. I was expecting him to half-ass it, but the guy wailed on the chair until the bailiff told him that's enough. The entire courtroom was like, holy shit dude, and that's how I got quite possibly the easiest child removal to date. Not that I had any thought I'd lose the case. The pictures were horrific, and that kid will have scars from that beating for life. That poor kid, his dad deserves to rot in prison. He got some jail time, but it's been so long ago I've forgotten exactly. I want to say between 2 to 5 years. Not enough, of course. I was on the prosecutor's side when a defendant failed to appear for court. His attorney can't reach him. Nobody know where he is. So we all sit there for about half an hour until the judge gets sick of it and moves on with the docket. We found out later that day that the defendant decided to rob a 7-over-11 the night before and was sitting in jail 2 counties over when he should been in court. The Chewbacca defense. In a jury trial, A Chewbacca defense is a legal strategy in which a criminal defense lawyer tries to confuse the jury rather than refute the case of the prosecutor. It is an intentional distraction or obfuscation. Till my sister told the judge that the light wasn't that red. Then he said he was going to suspend her license and she said, but my dad already took it away. Daddy took her T-Bad away. Her Geostorm. That kid who drunkenly mowed down a family of 4 argued that he was too spoiled to know the difference between right and wrong. How is that the worst defense? He successfully argued it and got probation. Link in description. That should sicken you. Who says it didn't? The Writers of Rick and Morty animated and voices a court case that actually happened. I recommend taking a watch. This is Kangaroo Court. Here's a full transcript. Link in description. Apparently, the defendant in question was ultimately sentenced to life in jail. Based on the way he was behaving, it seems like that's what he wanted anyway. Lawyer here bored at work and not wanting to get started on something, so I've seen some very stupid shit, though I mostly don't do criminal cases. So the stupid shit I tend to see requires a bit of explanation. However, when I was in law school I worked with a group that helped get restraining orders for people in abusive relationships. Family court in Queens was very much a cattle call situation, and it was easy to watch hearing after hearing, which I always found fun. On one particular day there were 2 absolutely amazing hearings. One was a case of 2 gay men. The guy claiming abuse was a huge man. Fat and definitely over 6 feet 4 inches. He was against his tiny partner. At first the magistrate was very incredulous, likely thinking what we were all thinking about the massive size disparity between the two. When the tiny guy got up to speak, he started scolding his larger partner for saying things like that, and at some point, he threw a pen at the bigger man. The bigger guy started to cry, and then the little guy started taunting him. The other involved a man trying to get an ex parte order against his girlfriend, which is relatively rare. It happens, but the vast majority are women getting them against men. This time, however, before his particular hearing could start, a woman came into the courtroom flanked with 2 other women. They were all 3 straight out of central casting for what you'd imagine New York City gang women to look like. They walk in and see the woman's partner seated in the courtroom. Though his hearing wasn't up yet, she immediately starts threatening everyone in the room, but especially the magistrate. The magistrate had them escorted out with the bailiffs, who called an extra. About 30 minutes later, the dude's hearing was up. The magistrate basically immediately granted the restraining order and said he'll put a note in for the full hearing about that woman's conduct. And that's why judging people purely on size is fucking stupid. Oh absolutely, but optics can be tough to get beyond. When my cousin was on a jury for a domestic case, the woman was put in the hospital by her boyfriend. She was in a coma for 18 months and couldn't even appear in court. Apparently the guy pushed her through a door and down the stairs. The guy's defense lawyer was actually trying to get him off with a lighter sentence, but then the guy opened his mouth and tried using the defense of if she would have just listened to me about not touching my gun I wouldn't have gotten so mad. I didn't think the push was strong enough to put her through the door. I didn't mean to put her in a coma. It just happens. When my cousin told me this, I couldn't believe it. He ended up spending 3 years in jail and is no longer allowed to possess weapons. He was deemed mentally incapable of handling such things. I watched a friend try a Dewey case. Her client testified that she wasn't drunk while driving, and therefore not guilty, because she was actually high on meth at the time. My friend put her head down and started hitting her head against the desk. Google I was a juror for a case against a woman that was charged with selling a stolen gun to a pawnbroker and possession of a gun by a convicted felon. She took the stand and admitted to finding the gun at a friend's house and taking it to the pawnbroker. Her attorney's entire closing argument was that the state failed to prove that it was a gun and the charges should be dropped. Never mind the fact that she admitted to it being a gun. The guy that owned the gun said it was his gun, and we had it right there in front of us. The defense said it was not a gun, because the state had not fired it to prove it was a gun. And of course, as soon as we get back to the room to deliberate, one of the other jurors said he was not convinced it was a real gun. That was a really long day. One of the other jurors said he was not convinced it was a real gun. That was a really long day. There's always one total more and equal slash. A domestic abuse case. The husband was the accused. The couple was in their late 70s or early 80s. When asked if he did indeed abuse his wife, the husband started complaining that some 40 years ago the wife pretended to be ill and he had to do the laundry all by himself, as if he expected the judge to just go, "Oh, okay, I guess that's cool then." A flumzer. That was just horrible, and if it had been written in a fiction book, readers would have scoffed. Just not possible. This author has gone beyond the bounds of possibility. His parents were obviously pieces of shit, too. Mother taking him to Mexico. Ike. Father doing things against the law, but I can't remember exactly. Punching someone, maybe? I thought it was a deer, 17-year-old that was high and ran over someone with his car. Diet love. I wasn't in the room when they raised the power. Legasov. If you weren't there, then where were you? Diet love. The toilet. Chernobyl. He had this weird unbalanced squat position the entire time. Hands all the way down. Dude was kind of slow as well. By far the worst defense I've ever seen on the court. Anyone could blow past him for a layup. Scene. Otherwise, I lolled. I found the girl dead before I raped her. Happy cake day. We have the same cake day. Of course his DNA / semen was in the alley behind his apartment / where a sexual assault took place. Where else would you expect to find your DNA, except where you lived? Maybe not exactly a bad defense, but when I was going through the legal system with my ex-wife, there was a case before ours between a woman and her son. She was suing him over a bag of cat food. He took a bag and never paid her for it after he'd promised. He was just kind of like, "Yep, I never paid her back, and I probably never will." What's worse is the judge sounded so casual about it, like, as if it was a normal thing for him to hear. Caught over a bag of cat food. Ted Bundy jumping out of the courthouse window and running probably didn't do much to convince people he was innocent. Man who killed both of his parents then begged for mercy because he was an orphan. Old joke. Lol. Thanks. These 5 people came into my court in Philadelphia. They said they were drunk and went to the Phillies World Series game and got stuck in the RLD in looking for a secret tunnel to the field. One of them had some kind of man crush on Chase Utley. Cue the theme song.